topic. It will be a smooth flow. So now, what I've shown here, these are two pictures of on the left. You see here, this is this is just a rip open part of a iPhone, and this is for a laptop or a PC motherboards. Now, if you see both these systems, there are a lot of electronic components. What we teach you in this course mainly is about the circuits inside the chip. Okay, so this is the processor IC. I think if you are interested in digital design, so next semester we'll offer a course called ADVD. So there we will, or I don't know if I'll be teaching it or not, but we will actually teach you the design of digital circuits which goes into a processor. And then there is other course called computer architecture. See, as you might by now have at least to some extent have an understanding that if you want to design a digital system, let's say a complex, you have a functionality and you want to implement it using digital logic. It's as a digital engineer, you will not be designing circuits. As a digital engineer, you will write a Verilog code, and the circuit will be automatically generated because you will have circuits corresponding to every gate. For example, let's say a universal gate like a NAND or NOR gates. If you implement a NAND or NOR gate, if you have circuits for it, a perfectly done circuit for a NAND or a NOR gate, then any logic functionality, if you want to implement any combinational logic, you have to just write some kind of a logical code which will then be converted to a circuit by a software. So there is really no hand design. You just have to understand some basics as to how the circuits will behave. So mostly digital design is about timing and functionality implementation and not about really circuit design. But it's good to actually have a good understanding of circuits. That's what you need in digital design. The analog design, for example, that is a hand design. You have to handcraft circuits. So far, we have not been able to automate it. So there are some, in the future at least, there is some good direction towards we are heading analog circuit design. The problem with analog circuit design is that, as we will start teaching you more and more in this course, is that you will notice that it's more of an ad hoc design. So the word, I'll use a word called seat of the pants. So seat of the pants is a word introduced during World War II. So what engineers used to do was that, especially after fighter jets and all that were introduced in World War II, propeller planes, and they were all introduced in World War II. Pilots, especially when they are traveling at very high altitudes and very high speeds, they will be surrounded by clouds on all four sides. And of course, all these pilots are given heavy training on the ground. On the ground, they will be given heavy training so that they know how to handle when they are in air. But it seems that none of the training actually works because because once they are in air, once they are in the clouds, they see clouds on all four sides. They lose orientation. They completely lose whether they are actually whether the flight is belly up or belly down. Even that they cannot tell. So they used to use a technique called seat of the pants. So they used to just perceive their seat and the pants. So if the flight is belly down, I mean in belly up, so meaning it's actually in the wrong direction, then they will know that their pants are off of the seats. So that's an indication that they have to flip the flight by 180 degrees. So then they'll perform a rotation and come back to a normal position. So that's like a seat of the pants job. So analog design is more like that, uh, because you will not be able to. You have to rely on softwares and also a lot of designer intuitions, which is why we have not been able to automate analog design. Can we completely automate? Meaning, you don't need any design. I mean, you just have to probably write like an intuitive code, and which will generate circuits. At this point, we don't have yeah at this point we don't really have any algorithm which can do that for us, so we have to do hand designing. So which is why we will be teaching you singles each and every transistor one by one. And digital design, for example, if you see here the processor design here, there is this, I mean, this is what I've shown in the red is actually Apple processor. The processor design, seat of the pant, yeah, pant, pants. So what they call an Apple processor, most of the engineers who build the processor, there will be two sets of engineers. One set of engineers is a very small number. Their job will be to design logic gates. So they will design inverters, NAND gates, and NOR gates. Now, you have to write a Verilog code. You will have some task to perform. You will write a Verilog code, and from the code, I mean, there will be softwares which will automatically synthesize a gate level circuit. From the gate level circuit, there is an automatic software. Once you design schematics for, I mean, circuits for individual logic gates, it will automatically generate a full blown circuit for the digital application you are working on. Okay, so engineer doesn't have to go back and design transistor by transistor. Whereas an analog design, on the other hand, and RF design concerns with very high frequency design. That engineers have to hand design every circuit. Every circuit has to be hand designed by engineers. As I told you, there is a lot of endeavor in trying to automate analog circuit design as well. So we are trying to bring machine learning into analog circuit design, but so far we have not succeeded. So it is still a field where we have to understand the basics and apply it. And the knowledge base required is quite large. You have to know signals and systems, control systems, and a reasonably good understanding of digital design. Okay, micro ADVD, of course. So these subjects require you on communication systems. All this, you'll apply all your CDCs in this course. I haven't introduced you to the idea of feedback. They will introduce the idea of feedback and control systems. But you will see that in this course, we will actually apply those ideas, because feedback was invented by an electrical engineer who was building amplifiers. As an idea, it was introduced by electrical engineers. So you will see that we will be applying those ideas at the later part of the course. Probably in 2-3 lectures, I'll discuss the ideas of feedback. Have they introduced feedback in control systems yet? Have they
Yes, sir.
introduced? Okay. So I'll actually we'll discuss about feedback in more detail as well. Okay. So that's the whole gist of what, because I'm about to start the actual course. So I thought I'll just give a brief introduction to that. Yeah. So far, what we have come to this very simple point. We have come to a point where we understood that an amplifier is a two-port device. It has an input port where you apply an input signal, and there is an output port which will typically serve a load resistor. I told you guys the load resistor models a finite power absorbing element. What do I mean by finite power absorbing element? Eventually, when you're delivering, you're eventually giving some kind of an output to, for example, I told you, if you consider an iron box needs 1000 watts for it to keep, or induction stove needs 500,000 watts or 100 watts, 500 watts, 1000 watts, and so on. Okay, so that's the power needed to heat water or anything. Finally, eventually, you need to do some work. So eventually, you'll have to deliver some power. Okay, in your cell phone, if you take you have to deliver power. Your cell phone radiates to a tower, the close by tower, that radiates around 1 watt of power. Okay, so eventually, circuit's goal is to deliver power to some circuit somewhere. Somewhere it will be delivering power. So that power is normally modeled as a resistor. As far as analog engineers are concerned, a power loss, whenever there is a loss in the circuit, that will usually be modeled by a resistor. Okay, I square R is the losses that this power lost across the resistor. Okay, and where does this power come from? The power has to come from the amplifier. The amplifier has to deliver this power. So that's why I said it's very a common tradition to model the load as a resistor. And I also said the input tends to have an input resistance, a finite input resistance. This is your general model for an amplifier. And we said amplifiers have three important properties: the input resistance, the output resistance, and the third important parameter, it's called intrinsic gain, unloaded gain. I'll call it A0. A0 is called the intrinsic gain or an unloaded gain. How do you measure an intrinsic gain? You ensure that there is no source resistance, which means there is no loss of power at the source. So RS is 0. Okay, and RL is infinity. So that's the maximum voltage gain you can deliver, because any finite RL is going to reduce load. If you remember, I said that the gain reduces by a factor of RL by RL plus R out. If I make sure RL is infinity, then this term becomes equal to 1. which means there will be no loss of any voltage. So this is the maximum voltage gain attainable under these conditions. When Rs is 0 and RL is infinity, whatever gain you get out of this amplifier, it's called as the unloaded gain. It's called as the unloaded gain or intrinsic gain. Okay. Now, why do we need intrinsic gain? It gives you, see, as an engineer, you don't know what the load is going to be. Generally, you also don't know what the source is going to be. Okay. Eventually, you will know. I mean, when you're actually designing the system, you will know. But intrinsic gain gives you an idea what is the maximum gain that this amplifier can give me. So I will know that even before designing an amplifier, I will automatically know that, okay, this amplifier cannot give a gain more than this. I automatically know that even before I start with the design. So then I will know that, let's say, for example, the desired gain you need is 1000. You need a gain of 1000. And it turns out the intrinsic gain is, let's say, 30. The intrinsic gain happens to be 30. Then what will you do? You will realize that by using one stage of an amplifier, I cannot get this gain. So then you will think, okay, maybe I need 2-3 stages, 30 into 30, that will be 900 and slightly more than that, So that's how you will come to the conclusion. So that is why it's important to know what an intrinsic gain is. And how do you measure intrinsic gain? You measure intrinsic gain by using these two conditions, Rs 0, RL infinity. It's called the unloaded gain of an amplifier. That's it. So this is what we have learned so far. We will see now how to build such an amplifier using a bipolar junction transistor. Okay, and as I told you, BJT, if a BJT has the IV characteristics, the output characteristics, as we saw before, then such a device can be used as an amplifier. I said if a BJT or any amplifying device, if it has an output characteristics that look like this, okay, it keeps changing with up to different input voltage, then this device can be converted into an amplifier. So that's what we discussed already in the previous lecture. And we also know that a BJT behaves this way. In this region, for the BJT's collector current only depends upon the base emitter voltage. Therefore, a BJT can be used as an amplifier. Now look at this structure. If you look at this, the amplifier structure here has 3 terminals, right? The amplifier has 3 terminals: input terminal, output terminal, and I generally told you there is a common terminal between the input and the output, and we said it's the common ground terminal between input and output. So now a BJT is also a 3-terminal device. Okay, a BJT also happens to be a 3-terminal device. So now what I will do is, because these 2 terminals are interchangeable, so BJT is a 3-terminal device. Now look at the 3rd terminal, it's a common terminal. So if I pick one terminal as the common terminal, the other 2 terminals can be either input or output. Okay, so first, then there are 3 possible configurations: common emitter, common base, common collector. Okay, so if I pick one terminal as the input, the other terminal as the output, the 3rd terminal becomes the common terminal. Since BJT is a 3-terminal device, I can expect it to have 3 common configurations: common emitter configuration, common base configuration, and common collector configuration. Common emitter terminal is the common terminal between input and output. Common base is the common terminal between input and output. Common collector happens to be the common terminal. Now let's take the first case of common emitter configuration. Now what does it mean? Emitter is the common terminal. Now I have fixed, okay, this is emitter. Now I have the other 2 terminals accessible to me is base and collector. Now let's assume out of this there are 2 possibilities: base can be input, collector can be output, or collector can be input and base can be the output. Okay, so first I will consider the case when collector is the input. Let's assume your collector is the input. If collector is the input, now we know BJT behaves as an amplifier in active region. If I apply an input here, which means I am varying the collector to emitter voltage. If I vary collector to emitter voltage, will there be any change in the current here, the base current or any other current at the output? Will there be any change? No change, right? Because collector to emitter we saw from the graph, even if you change the collector emitter terminal, your collector current doesn't change. So therefore, I want an output current generated that should be in proportion to the input voltage. So I can't use this. I can't use collector as an input there. So the only other possibility is to use base as an input and collector as the output. If I use base as the input, even before you do any calculations, you automatically know base, the input base current will, the collector current will be beta times IB. So I automatically know there is a current amplification. Okay, the output current is amplified version of the input current. I automatically know that. The second thing is that if I vary my base emitter voltage, then of course your collector current changes. For small signal variations, your collector current is approximately Gm times VBE. If you vary your VBE, your collector current is going to change approximately by Gm times VBE. This we saw from small signal models, right? And also we obtained this graph from obtained this value of Gm from the transfer characteristics. If you remember, we derived this characteristic. We drew what we call as the, and I said that we normally derive something called as an incremental model. From that, we find what is the gain. Say, okay, why do we need incremental model? What is the purpose of an incremental model? See, what is the goal of an amplifier? Eventually, let's say you are given an amplifier like this. Let me take this example. This is an amplifier here. You are applying a small sine wave here, a very small sine wave here. You expect a really large sine wave, maybe the polarity will be different, a really large sine wave at the output. Okay. Now, you are interested in finding out what is this amplification factor. If let's say A out is the amplitude of the sine wave at the output, and A in is the amplitude of the sine wave at the input, then the ratio A out by A in is called the voltage gain. Okay, output amplitude divided by input amplitude. The reason why we do small signal model, it is around the, not the cut-in voltage, the bias voltage, not the cut-in. You have to linearize the graph around the bias voltage. By linearizing the graph around the bias voltage, we can draw a small signal model, and from the small signal model, we can find the small signal gain. So we can actually estimate what will be the value of this gain. Eventually, we need this circuit to give us a certain gain. What is that value of the gain? That we estimated from a small signal model. So that is why we try to find an incremental or linearized model around the operating point. We draw the small signal model. From the small signal model, we then estimate the voltage gain that we can get out of this amplifier. Okay, so that's our intention. So eventually we need a voltage gain from the amplifier, and we will estimate that voltage gain from a small signal model. And we know how to derive a small signal model. The first step is you need to first find the quiescent current. Once you know the quiescent current, you know everything you need to know about the small signal model. Then from the small signal model, you can calculate all the parameters of an amplifier. The three important parameters of an amplifier are in, R out, A naught. If you know all the three, then you can find the gain for any source resistance and load resistance given to you. Okay, you are supposed to find R in, R out, and A naught. And I told you the significance of each of those quantities. A naught tells you, even before you start your design, it tells you what is the fundamental limit that an amplifier gain, what is the fundamental or maximum gain that an amplifier can give you. That is obtained from the intrinsic gain value. So we will now find out all these three parameters for one of the simplest configurations called common emitter configuration. So let me go back to this circuit. So what did we come to the conclusion? We came to the conclusion. Okay, you got it right. I was just giving you guys a motivation as to why are we deriving small signal model. The reason is we want to find all these parameters, R in, R out, A naught. That's why we are deriving the small signal models and all of that. Okay, from the small signal model, we will calculate the voltage gain. And if I feed a small sine wave at the input, the output sine wave at the output, I already know what is the amplitude that I'm going to get at the output. So that's the essence, that's the whole idea of finding the model. So now we said in a common emitter configuration, this configuration is called common emitter. So how do you find whether it's common emitter, common base, or common collector? Follow this general rule. see where the input is applied, and then see where the output is taken. The third terminal will be the common terminal, and that's called common emitter configuration. The configuration is named after the common terminal. So let me give you this circuit. The first circuit, what kind of configuration is the first circuit? Common emitter, common base, common collector. What circuit is this? Is this okay? Look at the input. Input is here. Where is it? It's connected to the base. And see the output. Usually short circuit the capacitors. Whenever you are finding this AC models, short circuit the capacitor. Output is at the collector. Input is at the base, output is at the collector. So therefore the third terminal will be the common terminal. So this is a common emitter configuration. See the input, see the output, the third terminal will be common. Now let me show this circuit here. What configuration is this amplifier here? No. Look at the amplifier properly. What configuration is that? No, what transistor is this? What kind of a transistor is this? Look at the arrow, right? It's a PNP. It's a PNP. So this is emitter, this is collector, this is base. So now what configuration is this? Input, where is the input? Input is at the base.
Common emitter.
Yes. So output is at the collector. Okay. So therefore the third terminal is common. Therefore it's a common emitter configuration with a PNP transistor. That's it. Okay. It's a common emitter configuration. It's not common base. It is common emitter configuration. Input is at the base, output is at the collector. The third terminal becomes the common terminal. Let me see. So, see, for example, let me give you a circuit like this. So what kind of configuration is this? See where the input is. This is emitter. Where is the output? Output is at the collector. The third terminal is base, therefore it's a common base configuration. That's it. So clear, right? You should be able to see the configuration by looking at the amplifier topology. Input, output, the third terminal will be your common terminal. That's it. Okay. Fine. So we are done now. So I just introduced the concept of common emitter configuration. So now we will take a common emitter amplifier and try to find out the input out resistance out. See, this is a simplest common emitter amplifier. I have not connected any source. I have not connected any load yet. So we'll take this and try to find out the three parameters of it: Rin, Rout, and A0, intrinsic gain. Three things for a common emitter configuration. So that's what I've shown here. This is a common emitter configuration. Input is at the base, output is at the collector, third terminal is common terminal. So we are supposed to find Rin, Rout, and A0 of this amplifier, the intrinsic gain of this amplifier. So first we will try to find Rin. So this is a common collector configuration. In fact, I told you guys, whenever you are measuring Rin, generally keep your load resistance. In many configurations, it doesn't depend upon the load, but in some configurations, it does depend on the load. So the best way is retain the load resistance as it is, and then measure the input resistance. How do you measure the input resistance? Apply a small voltage Vx and measure the current drawn inside. See, whenever you are doing small signal analysis, replace this transistor by its small signal model. The small signal model will be so this is R pi, GMV pi, R0, and then RL will be in parallel. Okay, so okay, you will have R0 and RL in parallel, and this is ground. Now look at this amplifier. I am applying a voltage Vx here. So can I say Vx equals V pi? Vx equals V pi, right? So this is V pi. Vx equals V pi. So this will be GMVx. Now, if I apply a voltage Vx and try to find the current Ix, what will be the ratio of Vx by Ix? R pi, right? It's just R pi. So therefore, that's it. R pi is the input resistance. So the input resistance is R pi. What does R pi depend upon? Can you express it in terms of, it is actually beta by Gm, which is nothing but beta into Vt upon the quiescent collector current. So once you set your quiescent collector current, your input resistance depends upon the quiescent collector current. If you increase your quiescent collector current, your input resistance will decrease. So these are some basic rules that you should be aware of. So as engineers, I told you, we have very few design parameters to tweak. As a BJT engineer, you will use your bias current to tweak. If you tweak your bias current, your input resistance will change. Okay. Later we will see how to increase the input resistance using some new circuit techniques, using some interesting circuit techniques. Right now, the input resistance of a common emitter configuration will be R pi. R pi is generally a large number. It will be in the order of few tens of kilo ohms. Okay, it's high. It is high. So when I say high, usually you should ask with respect to what. Okay, a 10 kilo ohm might be small compared to 10 mega ohms. So that's why you should relative to what. I'm always comparing it with 1 by Gm. 1 by Gm is the smallest resistance in a BJT. Alpha by Gm, 1 by Gm. That will be approximately in the order of 1 or 2 kilo ohms or less than that, even less than that. Right? R pi will be beta into 1 by Gm. So it will be almost 100 times or beta times larger than 1 by Gm. So generally you should expect R pi to be large. So the word large, it's a relative term. I'm comparing, saying large in terms of 1 by Gm. It's definitely larger than 1 by Gm. That's my comparison metric. Okay? That's something that you have to keep in mind. The next thing is output resistance. So, and second thing I told you guys, when you are measuring output resistance, keep the source resistance intact. Have the source resistance in place. That's the more accurate way of measuring low output resistance. Okay? It generally, the output resistance should not depend upon input source resistance, but in some configurations, which we will see now, it will have dependence. Okay? It won't happen in a common emitter configuration, but in some other configurations, you will see R out depending on source resistance. So how do you measure output resistance? Short circuit the input so that the circuit contains no other excitation. This is an amplifier. An amplifier, voltage amplifier has only one input. Vi is the only one input. So I'm shorting that itself. So there is no other excitation source in the circuit. Now I'm trying to apply a small signal output resistance at this point. Seen it is the collector. So take the small signal model here. Okay. Now we'll apply a voltage Vx and try to measure the current Ix. Okay. No, it's not 1 by Gm. Now, since the input voltage is ground, look at this circuit. See, this is your small signal model. Rs is 0. Rs is present. What is the voltage across Rs plus R pi? What is the voltage across Rs plus R pi? 0, right? So this node is at 0. This node is at 0. So what will be the current flowing through Rs plus R pi? Current will also be 0. There won't be any current flowing in the circuit. So therefore V pi will be 0. If V pi is 0, Gm V pi is also 0. So I can remove this current source. If V pi is 0, yes. So in that case, your output resistance in that case will simply be Vx by Ix will be R naught itself. So therefore the output resistance of this amplifier R out will be R naught, which is the early voltage upon the quiescent collector current. So for a simplest common emitter configuration, the output resistance is the R out itself, R naught itself. This is the R naught that you get from your IC, the output characteristics of a BJT, IC versus VCE. Okay, that's the R naught, you get it from this graph. 1 by R naught is the slope here. And that is also a function of the quiescent current. So if you increase your collector current, R naught also reduces. R naught reduces as you increase your collector current. Yes, VA is early voltage. You know, right? So if you extend this graph, If you extend this graph all the way to the x-axis, this will be minus of mod VA. So VA here is early voltage. Okay, so that's it. So this is for the simplest common emitter configuration. We found the input resistance, we found the output resistance. Now we'll find the intrinsic gain or unloaded gain. Is this okay with everyone? Output resistance?
Sir, can you explain the method to find Rn once again?
Method to find R in?
Once again.
R in, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now to find R in, the procedure is that you don't have to do anything to the output circuit, keep it as it is. At the input, just apply a voltage source and measure the input current. Now look at this. What is the input? In a common emitter configuration, input, I am applying input here directly. So this will be Vx. Vx is V pi. Okay, that's the voltage across R pi. So the current drawn from the input will be Vx by R pi. So Ix will be Vx by R pi because Vx is appearing entirely across R pi. So Vx by Ix, the ratio of Vx by Ix is simply R pi itself. And that is input resistance. Is that okay? That's it, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So now we are finally coming back to the most important block, we have an important parameter, which is the unloaded gain or intrinsic gain. To find the unloaded gain, I told you guys make RS as 0. Don't load it from the source side, don't load it from the load side. When I say load, that there is a ratio, the gain should not reduce on either sides. So this is the maximum attainable gain in this structure. I am going to apply my input voltage here. This is your input voltage. Okay. If this is your input voltage, what will be your V pi? Can I say V pi equals Vi? Because this is the base emitter voltage, V pi equals Vi. So if V pi equals Vi, I'll write this as GMVI. This node will this becomes GMVI. If this is GMVI, okay, see guys, I can write KCL and solve this problem, but I want you guys to visualize this way. The current flowing to this node is GMVI. Okay, instead I can say the current flowing through this side is minus of GMVI. So now this GMVI current is flowing here, it cannot flow at the output because it's open. It's going to flow through the resistance R0 and create a voltage drop of V0, which will be minus of GMVI, which is the current into R0. So the ratio of V0 by Vi is minus of GM into R0. So this is your intrinsic gain. Unloaded gain of a common emitter configuration is the simplest common emitter configuration is minus GM R0. Okay, this is a fundamental limit. You take a single stage BJT amplifier, single stage meaning it has only one stage, one common emitter, one amplifier in it, one BJT device in it. You cannot exceed a gain of GM0. This is a fundamental limit. Is this clear to everyone? See guys, I didn't solve it using KCL. You can solve it using KCL as well, but I want you to think like this. Visualize it like a current flowing this way. Okay, the minus GMVI is flowing and it's going to flow through the resistor and create a voltage drop across it. That drop will be current times the resistance minus GMVI times R0. So you get this. Now let's compute what does this GM R0 product depend upon. We know GM is the quiescent collector current upon VT. VT is thermal voltage, and R0 is early voltage VA upon ICQ, the quiescent collector current. Then the intrinsic gain is the product of GM into R0, which is IC by VT or ICQ by VT into VA by ICQ. So the collector current gets cancelled out, and your intrinsic gain depends upon the early voltage and thermal voltage. Now this is a very interesting result because generally as a designer you don't have much control over the early voltage. You don't have much, it depends on the doping concentrations, base width and all of that. You don't have much control there. But thermal voltage is also something that you don't have control over. It's a function, it's a value that depends upon temperature. So therefore, if you see this intrinsic gain, it is independent of the bias current. It is independent of your bias operating point. It doesn't depend upon IC, VBQ, I mean mainly ICQ is the only important thing. It doesn't depend upon it. R in, if you recall, it was R pi, which had a dependence VT upon beta VT upon ICQ. So it has a dependence upon the collector current. R naught is the early voltage upon ICQ. That also has a dependence on collector current. But the intrinsic gain A naught does not depend on the collector current. So as a designer, yes, tell me.
So here VT is 0.025.
My 0, what is it?
25.9 millivolts. If the temperature is 300 Kelvin, is 25.9 millivolts, right?
Yeah, your BT is 25.9 millivolt at 300 Kelvin.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I already discussed that, how to find VT2 per year. So what I'm trying to say here is that the intrinsic gain or the unloaded gain is independent of bias current ICQ. It doesn't depend on that. Okay? It's a very interesting result. So even before you design a BJT amplifier, let's say you know VA and you know VT, you automatically know what is the maximum gain you can get out of this amplifier. You automatically know that you cannot exceed this gain. Okay? Now any resistor, if you connect at the output, any load resistance will ensure that the gain is less than this number, VA by VT. It will always be less than that. Okay, GMR naught is the minus of GMR naught is your ultimate, the maximum limit of the voltage that you can get out of the common emitter amplifier. Okay, your gain will always be less than this if you connect a load resistor in parallel. Now with the load resistor, if you connect the load resistor, what will be the overall gain? So that will very quickly derive it. I've already derived it in one of the previous lectures when you have a load resistance, but we can derive it again. Draw the small signal model for the BJT. Okay, and you are supposed to find the voltage V naught. See, whenever you are given many nodes in a circuit, go step by step, node by node. What is the ratio of V pi by Vs? What is the ratio? It's a voltage divider here, right? Voltage divider, so it will be R pi by R pi plus Rs. R pi by R pi plus Rs. That is the voltage ratio from here to here. That's it. So you know this ratio. Now you have a current GM pi. Always, guys, now you're not, I don't want you to do KCL, just visualize this. So you have a current of minus GM pi flowing here. Both these resistors are in parallel, they both are in parallel. So you have a voltage drop of V naught, which is minus of GM into R naught parallel RL into V pi. Now replace V pi, you replace your V pi with R pi by R pi plus Rs into Vs. That's it. So you have your voltage gain. So take V naught by Vs, that will be your voltage gain. Your V naught by Vs, if you recall from the old lectures, I said whenever you have an amplifier with loading, it is Rn by Rn plus Rs, RL by RL plus Rs are out here at the output terminal, and A naught is the intrinsic gain. Okay, so we'll try to express it in this form: R pi by R pi plus Rs into Jm into R naught parallel RL. We just derived this result. So you can write it as G. The first term I'm going to write it as it is. Second term, if I expand this, I get R naught RL by R naught plus RL into Gm. So Gm R naught into RL by RL plus R naught. So now look at this. It is in this form. This term, and the intrinsic gain. There is a minus sign, of course. The sign doesn't matter. There's a minus sign here. So your gain reduces on either sides if you load it with a finite source resistance or a finite load resistance. And this is the maximum attainable gain. Gm into R naught is the maximum attainable gain of this amplifier under no load conditions, meaning when RL is infinity and Rs is 0. Okay? So that's it. I'll solve one tutorial question. So this is the tutorial question given to you guys. So in this course, many a times we won't actually give you, many a times we won't show you the biasing conditions. We may not give you biasing conditions, and we usually will ask you to assume that the circuit is already biased. One such example is this. We have already given you this circuit. Question number 4 of your tutorial, I didn't get to solve. In this circuit, you are supposed to find the voltage gain for different cases. The first example, beta is infinity, VA is infinity. If beta is infinity, VA is infinity, we just derived all the parameters for common emitter configuration. What is Rn for common emitter configuration? R pi. What is R out for common emitter configuration? R naught. Now tell me, for the first case, when beta is infinity, VA is infinity, what is the value of Rn for this amplifier? What is the value of Rn? Is that okay with everyone? Rn is infinity because R pi is beta, Vt upon ICQ. It is infinity. What is R out? R out is also infinity. That is also infinity. Okay? Rn is infinity, R out is infinity. If Rn is infinity and R out is infinity, let's take the first case. What will be the voltage at this terminal? What will be the voltage here? See, this input impedance is infinity. So the current flowing is 0. If the current flowing is 0, no, not the DC voltage. I'm asking small signal AC voltage. Yeah. VI itself, right? VI, if this current is 0, this voltage will also be at VI. Now I want you to visualize this way. The moment you apply a voltage VI here, a current GMVI is going to flow from collector to emitter. That's what your small signal model is telling you, that, right? Small signal model tells you a current GMV pi, or now in this case it is GMVI, is going to flow from collector to emitter. R naught is infinity, so I can ignore R naught here. So you just have a circuit like this. GMVI into RL. So the voltage gain, output voltage will simply be, a current of minus GMVI will flow through this. So minus into GM into RL into VI will be V naught, and your voltage gain will be minus GMRL in the first case. That's it. So from this you calculate the gain and you write it. That's your first case circuit. Fine, right? There is no RL here. So you're now, if you see in this example, AB is minus of GMRL. Now take AB, GM is nothing but ICQ upon VT into RL. Now look at this. This circuit, because R naught is infinity, if I ask you what is the intrinsic gain of the circuit, what will it be? Infinity, right? Infinity, yes. Because your gain is GM into R naught. GM is finite, but R naught is infinity. Because your collector current is given to you, you can find all the small signal parameters. R naught is infinity. But the actual gain, when you actually load it with a resistor, it happens to be ICQ by VT into R. Now if you see this gain, your actual gain is a function of the quiescent collector current. You increase the collector current, you get a large gain out of it. So this is also another important, but just keep in mind, whenever you have a load resistance, your gain will depend on the current as well. So that's the tutorial number, question number 4. The second part is very trivial. You find out R pi, and then you can calculate it with values are given to you. You can just derive. I just derived this problem fully. From this model, we just saw how to calculate the voltage gain. I gave you guys the expression. You can calculate it yourself. Okay. I think I'll discuss this question in the next class, because if we have to cascade, how to analyze an amplifier when it is cascaded will be a bit of a challenge. I mean, I can start now, but I may not be able to finish it. So I'll discuss it in the next class. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. We're done with today's lecture. First part, what are we supposed to discuss? What do you want me to discuss? No, you are supposed to. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we found when we found VI,
Yeah.
I was not able to get that part.
No. See, what I was saying is you can draw the small signal model and derive it, but think about it intuitively. I said the input resistance for a common emitter configuration we just derived is R pi. That we derived, no? That's the input resistance of a common emitter configuration. emitter base, this is R pi. Now, R pi is nothing but beta Vt upon ICQ. That's your R pi. Now, for a given collector current is given as 1 milliampere. Vt is 325 millivolts at 25.9 millivolts at 300 Kelvin. Beta is infinity, R pi is also infinity. So, we said the input resistance is infinity.
Yes.
If the input resistance is infinity, this part is open circuit. No, input resistance is infinity. So, R pi is infinity.
Yes, sir.
This is V pi. This is Vi. So this current flowing through that is 0. So which means the voltage here is also Vi. The same voltage will appear here.
Yes, sir.
So that's
Oh,
what
God is there.
V pi is Vi. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, can you explain the second part too?
Second part, what is there in it? Second part, you are supposed to find the voltage gain. So now you know Vi. Second part meaning this part, beta 100, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if beta is 100, then R pi is finite. In that case, you will actually have a finite R pi. So the voltage division will be R pi by R pi plus Rs into Vi. That will be your V pi. R pi you can find it from this equation. Beta is given to be 100 into Vt upon ICQ. Vt is known, ICQ is known. You find it from this. You get the ratio R pi by plus R pi into Vi. So once you know Vi, that you have to multiply it by the second part remains the same. Second part I have given Va is infinity, so R naught is still infinity. R naught is Va by ICQ, that is infinity. So the small signal model at the output side becomes Gm into V pi into RL. So the output voltage V naught will be minus of Gm RL into V pi, and V pi you can substitute here. So it will be minus GMRL into R pi by R pi plus Rs. So that's the
Yes, sir.
value.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.